What is going on, everyone? I'm here today with Alex. He's a manufacturing consultant for RoMa Craft. You may also have heard of him through his Instagram, Benchworks Cigars. Today, we're going to be talking to Alex and pick his brain apart on what exactly he does as his position in manufacturing consultant for RoMa Craft and the factory he currently works in by extension called Nicaragua. And we're going to see what exactly makes the difference between good tobacco, bad tobacco, amongst with many other questions that we have in mind for our Canadian viewers and audience. So, Alex, thanks for doing this.
Let's go Canada.
Yeah, right on. So, you as a fellow Canadian, can we go over a brief history as to growing up in Canada, what got you started with tobacco, why tobacco, what makes it so fascinating?
Um, I think, I always remembered, like, whenever I would see cigars or see somebody smoking a cigar, I'd be like trying to smell it as a kid. If I saw a cigar on the ground, I'd be looking at it. If I saw cigars at like a convenience store, I was always like attracted to it. Uh, there was a movie I would watch when I was a kid. It was Flipper. I don't know if you guys watched Flipper.
I have not, to be honest, no.
There's the same actor that plays Crocodile Dundee, and he's like this cigar smoker, super alpha male, like typical like macho man in the movie, and he was
Yeah.
smoking cigars. So I guess it looked cool, and then I got into cigars because of that.
I guess for us, I obviously growing up, my dad always had the cigar shop here, but if I had to relate it to a movie, it'd be Scarface. I don't know if you've watched that before.
Oh hell,
Uh,
dude, hell yeah, I watched
yeah,
Scarface. I love Scarface.
that is something I revisit all the time. And I don't know, in Nicaragua, it kind of had that vibe. My brother and I would always joke about it because the environment around us, it kind of was reminiscent of that movie, the kind of the way it was structured. It was sick.
Dude, the the cigar gangsters of Esteli, they're all little Tony Montanas. I
Man,
will tell you that.
I can name you so many that we've come across, these like big time hustlers, man. They just trying to hustle the money out of us. It's crazy.
Dude, it's I'm so happy you bring that up because that's
Yeah.
really how it is, man. They're real gangsters. But it's life, man. It was like that in construction when I was in construction, and it's in cigars and it's in everything, right?
No, 100%, man. So, back in so you started in Canada at first. I remember when I was in Nicaragua about 10 days ago, you were mentioning that you were rolling cigars here. Uh, and then how long did that take you, like, to develop as a skill? And then what made you want to commit to leaving Canada and going to Nicaragua full time?
Well, so when I was about 19, no, when I was 20, I moved to Toronto. I'm from Montreal,
Yeah.
and I was working construction, and I took a break at about almost 21 to go work at a cigar shop. Trey's, what is it called? The Smoking Cigar on Bayview at
Yeah.
Trey's.
Right
So
on.
shout out to Trey. He's the shit.
Hell yeah.
And I took a break and I worked at Trey's, and every time like a rep would come in or somebody from a company or whatever that was related to the bridge between the brand and the manufacturing, I would ask them like, hey, how could I one day work in the cigar industry but on the manufacturing side, whether
Wow.
it's pre-industry or I wanted to see how could I be in this game because it looks really really interesting. And it was something I was into cigars. I was smoking cigars since I was 16, and I was reading interviews and watching IPCPR stuff since I was 16. So it was like it had already grown in me. Everybody told me I was crazy and it was not going to happen. You have to be born into the industry or whatever.
Shit.
And so that was a bummer, and I was a little depressed by that. But then Cristel, Cris, Crisanto Cardena, old Cuban master roller, came to the shop. He's passed away a year ago now, sadly. And
Rest
he
in
was the
peace.
roller. Yeah, man. He was the roller and master blender for Robert Pelayo, who has the Azan brand.
Okay, yeah, yeah, we've heard of that. Azan Burgundy? Is that what it is?
Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah.
yeah. And so he came to the shop, just a roller and master blender, and he was this old school Cuban dude, very serious, making cigars, and I didn't speak Spanish, so I tried to communicate with him, but he was all serious and just being like, you know, not understanding what I was saying. Like, for example, I told him, tell them, quiero un café, because I meant to tell them, quieres un café, do you want a coffee? But I didn't conjugate the verb the right way, so I told him I wanted a coffee, basically.
No
I
way.
was trying to
How do you
ask
take
him if
that?
he wanted a coffee. So he's like, the fuck, dude, I'm making cigars here, and you want me to make you coffee? Like,
Fuck, that's
but
hilarious.
it was all just funny. Yeah, yeah. But by the end of the day, at the end of my shift, I asked him if he could show me how to roll a cigar, and he helped me a lot. He showed me how to do it. But then by the time I was done, he that serious old school man had a smile on his face, and that's a guy who didn't smile all day. And he said, "You have good hands, like for making cigars," and that really motivated me. From that day on, I was like, okay, I'm gonna find a way to get some tobacco leaves, and if nobody's gonna teach me, I'll do it myself. And from then it was, just getting tobacco, trial and error, smoking every independent, you know, tobacco by themselves, and starting to blend two together, blending three together, blending four together.
Yep.
And through that, I learned how to make cigars the right way. Watching YouTube videos of how people bunch at Drew Estate, how people bunch at Hoya de Nicaragua, um, you know, learning everything I could.
Okay, beautiful. That's very well said. Can I ask, like, when you were looking to commit to the job full time and trying to find a way into the tobacco industry back in your early days in Toronto, what is it about Nicaragua that distinguished itself as an attractive destiny and you kind of gravitated towards there as opposed to other cigar producing countries like the Dominican, for example?
I actually gravitated more towards Dominican
Okay.
by my own choice, because like when I started, so I left the cigar shop because I had to make money, and working as a cigar shop just as a clerk, like I couldn't keep doing it because Toronto's really expensive. And I went back to construction. I became assistant foreman. I was a layout guy, and on and on and on. So I was growing. My career in construction was growing, and so was finally the pay after a little while. So when I finally had some money to travel, I went and I would travel to Dominican Republic. Actually, I wouldn't go to Nicaragua. I was going to Dominican Republic to learn.
Whereabouts in the Dominican?
Santiago de los Caballeros. It's the Esteli. It's
It's
like
the
the
Esteli.
Esteli.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Yeah. Cool, cool. So then, like, ultimately, like, what kind of strayed you away from Dominican to go back to Nicaragua?
Well, I was only going there to learn. I was thinking maybe I would make a brand for Canada, so I was, building contacts, seeing what kind of project I could make for Canada there, blending some samples and stuff. And then COVID hit, so all that went to a halt, and I focused a lot on what I could do in Canada, with making cigars by myself, all that. And then, I had some people that I started the web started growing of who I was knowing and who was following me on Instagram and all that. And somebody that worked at Oliva, his name Benoit Pirat, a Belgian guy. We were friends on Instagram, and Oliva was looking for somebody to replace him because he was moving on to work in the machine made industry that is also owned by the same family that owns Oliva nowadays. He was doing pre-industry. He was doing fermentation for filler for Oliva. And so he was like, hey, we're looking for somebody from outside of Nicaragua. I know you have your background in management and construction. I see what you're doing with cigars, all that. You know Spanish. Come down, come down to Nicaragua and have come for a month or something, and come see how you like Oliva, and Oliva will see how they like you and all that. And it was basically a 1 month interview for Oliva.
Right on.
So I came, loved it, and then I had to do a big decision because it was I had a career in construction going well. I was
Yeah.
starting to save money. Not being in debt. Um, the stuff I was doing with cigars in Canada, a lot of people were appreciating it. We had some cool
Wow.
events and stuff. And my fiance
Yeah.
still in Canada. So it was a big, big sacrifice, but I did the jump, because it was something I had worked on for so long, and I really wanted to be in the real game, not just saying, oh, one day I'll be in the industry for real, real. I had to So I had to take the pay cut. I had to, be away from home and all that. But it was all worth it. And my time at Oliva was great. I had a lot of fun. I learned a lot from a lot of people that were really generous with their knowledge with me. And they were, they were appreciative of, my work. And I'm really proud of that. It was, I gave it all I had.
100%, man. Which leads us to the next question. And also for those who aren't aware, Oliva being one of the top tobacco growers, producers in the whole country, if not the world, for as at least from Cuban origin. I think another contenders, Plasencia, they might be the biggest. Plasencia, Oliva's probably the second biggest. Correct me if I'm wrong.
So when it comes to growing tobacco, Plasencia is bigger than Oliva
Yeah,
because they're the thing that a lot of people don't know is that Plasencias are first they're growers and then they're manufacturers.
and then they're manufacturers. Yeah.
They're
And Oliva
humongous.
has two sides. They have the growing side and then the manufacturing side as well.
Well, Oliva's really fully vertically integrated. So they'll they have their own the genetic guy, they have they control their own seeds, genetics. They have everything that's the field from A to Z. They have everything fermentation from A to Z, selecting the tobacco, packing it up, and then they have all the production A to Z. They even make their own boxes, so they're vertically integrated.
Right on. So like what were some of like the transitional skills, if I might ask, like from Oliva that kind of, helped you move on towards your time now currently at RoMa Craft? Because I remember my brother and I were there like 10 days ago. You were like there was just so much going on. You're talking about so many processes. You're talking about picking the right leaf. You even blended us some tobaccos with different fillers to show us what side's sweeter, what side is more bitter. Demonstrating knowledge on all levels, and it just makes me wonder, like, was all that courtesy of Oliva, or was that the accumulation of like never-ending research since you were in Canada?
I personally, from in my life, it's been if I couldn't learn it from somebody, I would learn it by myself. But you're still learning it from somebody.
Right
It'd
on.
be reading articles. It'd be reading articles. It'd be watching interviews. I can. What I can say is that I did every single thing I could with every single free moment I had to learn everything I could by myself. Obviously, when I went to Oliva, I learned a shitload more. So, can we swear here?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's all good. It's all
Not
good.
really.
I'm
We'll
I'm
try
I'm
to
pretty
keep
sure
it
you can.
PG.
It shouldn't be a problem.
We'll try to keep it PG.
Yeah.
So, because if there's a lot you can learn from reading between the lines, and I mean, I even read about cigarette tobacco. I would search every single piece of information I could get by myself on the internet. But when you learn from somebody that's doing that specific thing every day, then you really get years and years and years of knowledge condensed into the key information points you need to master a thing. I mean, obviously I'm not mastering those things, but I get those key information points on what matters. So at Oliva, when I would be working Monday to Friday, on Saturdays I would go to the factory, and they were really, really nice. They would let me go to the factory um, and go and learn from every part that I wanted to learn from. So, for example, there's a part where they get the packs of tobacco at the factory, and they unstick the leaves. And when they're unsticking the leaves, they have to sort it again, and they check the level of fermentation, the level of strength of the leaf. Just me learning from Marlon. His name is Marlon, the guy who's at the head of that at Oliva. Just from Marlon, just from that single little, which sounds stupid little part of the factory, it's actually an extremely important part of the factory. It
Unbelievable.
sounds like, oh yeah, just
Yeah.
opening packs, whatever. No, man, that's where the blending happens.
Yeah. So
Skip Martin
obviously,
says this thing that's.
I'm sorry. I'm
Oh,
sorry. I didn't
sorry,
mean to cut
sorry.
you off. No, I just
No,
like
no, no, no worries.
you're going it like so the complexity of like the whole like the knowledge that you have in general, it's been accumulated over so many years, Oliva playing such a pivotal role of that. But let's just say for like the general audience right now who have no idea what that cigar went through when they light it up, how could they distinguish like good tobacco from bad tobacco? On in the most, I know it's maybe a broad question, but if you had to simplify it to one definition, what would be a good tobacco? What would be a bad tobacco?
Well, we as humans like to say what's the best of the best, but really that's when you look at the way consumption is structured in our society,
Mm-hmm.
it's marketers make it up. Because at the end of the
Right.
day, it's like if I say, hey, what makes a chocolate bar really good? And are we really going to pull the chocolate bar maker to tell me, the consumer, what's the best? Who cares, man? I like O. Henry because it's sweet. I like Hershey because it's creamy. At the end of the day, if the consumer likes the cigar, it's a good cigar. As a cigar manufacturer, there are key points that we are conscious of that is conclusive to making a better quality cigar. One thing is, when you smell the cigar, how much does it kind of sting your nose? How much stimulation does it bring to you? If you smell a
Absolutely.
cigar, and there's not much smell to it, and if it's um, uh, what's the smell of a old basement? Mildewy.
Yeah, yeah, like moldy.
Yeah, if it's moldy, mildewy, there's the tobacco that either had a mold problem or just was never had the right organic materials in the leaf for it
Sure.
to have the good stuff. It would just be a dead leaf with none of the good fat in it. Let's put it this way. It's not a very scientific term, but
No, it's all good. We need
you
to keep it simple like that for sure.
yeah. So whatever stimulates you the most when you're smelling the tobacco when you're not burning it, and it's not anything of mildewy or this danky smell, then you're usually on the good route.
100%, man. So,
So
when it comes to like the different roles of tobacco that play in the cigar, obviously, I would assume the average cigar smoker may or may not understand that there's the wrapper, the binder, and the filler, and they all play different roles. But in your expertise, is it fair to say that one plays more of an important role than the other, or are they all equally the same level?
my experience, not my expertise. In 20 years, maybe I can say my
Yeah,
expertise.
sounds fair.
So basically, you have to look at it like you're making a drink. If you're mixing a whiskey sour, I don't know how to make a whiskey sour, but let's just say a whiskey sour is Coca-Cola, whiskey, and lemon. Let's
Okay.
invent it that it's right. If you put half whiskey, half Coca-Cola, there's 50-50, but the whiskey's taking over the Coca-Cola, right?
Yeah, right on.
So there's one of the two materials that takes over the other. But even though in weight they're half half, so then you add the lemon. You add a drop of lemon and it changes completely the drink. But you don't want a third whiskey, a third Coca-Cola, and a third lemon. It's just going to be out of balance. It's the same thing with tobacco. One isn't more important than the other. They each have a different role to play. They all play a different role depending on which tobacco is chosen for the blend. If you make a cigar with really, really light fillers and a really, really strong wrapper, you're going to feel that wrapper more than the fillers. And you could be trying to do that for a purpose. Maybe you want to make a cigar that tastes a lot like a Connecticut broadleaf wrapper. So you put in light fillers and you put a Connecticut broadleaf wrapper on there, and this is going to be your lead roll, right?
Right.
So in that case, the wrapper does all the work in the cigar. But if you make a cigar full of super strong fillers, super flavorful, just juicy fillers, and you put on a very thin, very well aged Habano wrapper, it's going to be so delicate that you won't taste any of it.
Yeah, because there's too much
So
going
then,
on.
well, because there's the whiskey is the filler and the Coca-Cola is the wrapper, and it's not even Coca-Cola, it's diluted Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
So the people that claim that the wrapper gives all the flavor or the filler gives all the flavor, it's not a real answer because it changes for every blend.
Right. And it also can vary depending on the size of the cigar, like the ratio of the filler relative to the wrapper, not just how much of each you're using, right?
Exactly, because that's where your ratios change the same way your ratios would change in a drink.
Yeah, exactly. So there's also another interesting question I want to bring up here, because from my experience working at the cigar retail level, sometimes we have cigars that are labeled as Picadura. Some of them are just, the standard premium cigar we know as to be long filler. We get the question every now and then, like, why is this called Picadura? Can you go over a quick definition as to what Picadura tobacco is? And I remember you briefly going over how it's gotten to be cheaper in recent times. Can you go over like quickly as to why that is the case as well?
Picadura just means whatever is small pieces of tobacco. Within Picadura, you have different classes of Picadura. You have. I'm making half of this up. Those are street names I'm making up. I'm sure the machine-made cigar companies have way better uh, classes of Picadura. But you have a filtered Picadura, which is râpé, they call
Yep.
it. So it's the sifted true picadura, and it's grinded and it's really into small little pieces. You have the filler picadura, so whatever comes from a production table that is just the fillers. So when they're making the cigar, the little pieces that they don't end up putting in the cigar that are discarded. You have boquilla, which is this part of the cigar. When they're making it, they have to cut it exactly to length once it's finished. That little, half inch of cigar is a type of picadura. They only accumulate that aside to be sold specifically for a specific need of picadura. There is recorte, which is the cut of the wrapper, the part that is not used of the wrapper. So, if you have the whole leaf of wrapper, you're going to cut some from the top, some from the bottom, and that's discarded. That is also kept aside separately. At the end of the day, picadura is short pieces of tobacco.
Valid. Fair.
Those different classes are for manufacturing, necessities, so they can, blend a short filled cigar to their desire.
Right on, right on. So, another one of the most fascinating experiences I remember when I visited the warehouse. My brother and I were asking a question regarding the filler tobacco and how the sugars dissipate into the filler tobacco. And you were showing us a visual demonstration by blending different fillers and or structuring it differently when you roll them together as to why this one is more bitter, why this one's more sweeter. Can you go over a quick explanation as to what makes the sugars dissipate and the way they do naturally? And what part of the filler would be considered to be sweeter and bitter in that case?
I don't think, but I had that conversation with different people about sugars and tobacco, and I try to go with the more scientifically educated people's answers, because I don't have no background. I mean, I only finished high school and learned all the rest on the in the terrain. But basically, sugars. If there is any in tobacco, once it's done curing, then it's all consumed within the fermentation. So it's not actual sugars. It's flavor compounds that we associate with sweetness. There's not actual sweetness happening. It's the aroma of coffee. It's the aroma of anything that we associate with more sweet.
Yeah, like
But
if it were
there
to be
is there's
bitter, bitter could remind you of coffee, just for example, like just something you would associate it with.
exactly. So whatever flavors are at the tip of the leaf are flavors that we associate more with sweet, and they're also the lack of bitterness or lesser bitterness at the tip of the leaf versus the bottom of the leaf. The more something is bitter, the less you perceive it as sweet, because that's why we put sugar in coffee to attenuate the bitterness, right? So they're two
Yeah.
they're nemesis, right? So um, at the tip of the leaf, there's just more concentration of um, all the organic matter that becomes flavor compounds once it's burned. So the leaf has its process of photosynthesis and all these things that it does to survive and we just use the plant to have those things it uses for its own needs to go work for our needs. So we know, okay, if we let it have those processes going, we cut it at the right moment, so these organic matters are in the plant. Once you ferment it, those become compounds that, once they're burned, are flavors to us. Happens so at the tip of the leaf, the processes that happen at the tip of the leaf in the field keep more of what we associate with flavor and strength. At the bottom of the leaf, the processes that happen and whatever stays there as an organic compound is more bitter once you burn it. So you, as you're making a cigar, you can choose where you're going to use which part of the leaf. That's a part of the manufacturing process.
Fair enough. Yeah, and then just looking over the time here, believe it or not, it's almost been a half hour, and it's notified me that there's about 4 minutes left. But I do have another valid question that I think is appropriate for this podcast, and I definitely would want to have you on a part two if that's something that you would consider doing in the future, because there's just too much to learn from you. You touched up on the fermentation process at your previous answer. I'm just curious. I didn't get a chance to ask you in person, but why would the fermentation process be any longer or shorter for different kinds of tobacco when you guys are going through that?
So fermentation is really oxidation. Actual fermentation works anaerobically, so without oxygen. What we call fermentation for tobacco needs oxygen, and it's really an oxidation of the leaf. What happens is that the leaf has certain organic compounds, or whatever you want to call it, that are a long chain. And as you're oxidizing it, the bacteria and microorganisms are eating that up and cutting it up in smaller molecules. The smaller the molecule, the more it's been proven to go from whatever it is, be burnt, and come out as flavor. The longer the molecule, the less it tends to come out as flavor when it's burnt. So when you ferment it, you're just creating an environment for those bacteria to start eating what's in the leaf and leaving behind what you want to be left in the leaf. You're transforming a big building block into smaller pieces that give you what you want, which is flavor and strength in tobacco.
Makes sense. Yeah. So just
some tobacco. You wanted to know. Sorry, the question was which one is longer, which one is shorter.
Right
some
on.
Tobaccos you want to have color when it's wrapper. So you have to bring it to a higher temperature. You have to bring it for a longer time. Sometimes it's shorter. It's really within the 4 minutes we have left. It'd be hard to explain it, but you always want to bring more flavor to the tobacco. But when it comes to wrapper, you're also looking for aesthetics. So usually, you have some tobaccos that's a lot of heat, short amount of time, and you have some tobaccos that's lower heat, longer amount of time, depending on what color you're looking for or what kind of flavor you're looking for.
That's well said. And with the minute and 40 seconds I have left, I remember we touched up on the tobacco varietals when we were together, and Skip Martin, the head of RoMa Craft, one of the most knowledgeable people in the field, he was talking about what makes this one more special than the other. I'm curious, I want to ask you more of a personal question as we wrap it up. Do you have a favorite tobacco varietal that you prefer to work with, and if so, why?
I like there's Criollo 98 was a seed that was used the most in Nicaragua for a while, and now there's a lot of Corojo 2012 being used because it's more it's less susceptible to problems in the field and stuff. The 98 was better because it just had more building blocks to it. It had more flavor. It was a heftier leaf. So anything from Dominican Republic, like Piloto, HVA, some of the seeds I like. There's a lot of good tobacco all over the place, but I think a lot of spotlight for Nicaragua, but we can't forget about the Dominican Republic.
Hell yeah,
Great
brother.
Tobacco grown there.
Very well said. Alex, thank you so much for your time. Unfortunately, this has to be cut short given the software that we're using, but a part 2 is coming soon. Really appreciate your brother, and look forward to keeping in touch.
Dude, more than my pleasure, man. You guys are awesome. I'm looking forward to you guys coming back to Nicaragua.
Yeah, sooner than later, for sure. Talk to you soon,
Perfect,
brother.
Man. Peace.
Bye.